We'll jump in and you were making this point that we're seeing this authoritarianism from Donald Trump, and in the wake of his election and in the run up to his election, I was talking a lot about this guy Bob Altemeyer, who I tried to have on. He was the one from Canada who had written extensively and was actually the basis of the research that John Dean was doing when he wrote his I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was the follow-up to the Conscience of a Conservative. Mm-hmm. And Altemeyer had done research suggesting that 25% of North Americans are right-wing authoritarians. He was it was a psychological analysis. They had run a lot of he was a professor of psychology at the University of Manitoba. They had run a lot of clinical trials and research over the course of like 25 years, and had come up with that assessment. And he also argued that there is a left-wing authoritarianism, but it's much smaller. It's just it's just a much smaller phenomena. But this 25% of North Americans, tracks pretty closely with the assessment that Donald Trump has, that I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose any support. And even George Bush, who was a dismal failure by the time he left office. I mean, I would argue he was a dismal failure throughout. But absolutely. Never dipped below 32%, I think it was, 35% approval rating.
Well, now you have centrist Democrats praising him as if he was some kind of indeed, icon because he's not as bad as Trump, I guess.
Exactly. And when you see stuff like Cuomo and de Blasio come out and let's which one is best to play? Is it clip number 4, do you think, Brendan?
They're all good. I would say 4 is the most immediate.
Let's start with Cuomo, number 3. Cuomo's talking about how stunned he is at the disrespect that protesters are showing police officers. Now, by anybody's understanding, police officers, like you would think, like day one, they get into the academy and their trainer says, what I'm going to teach you on day one is how to deal with people who are going to be disrespectful to you, because that's the nature of the job. But here is Andrew Cuomo say he is stunned by it.
They've treated police officers with such disrespect in New York City that I am stunned. I've never seen that level of disrespect to a police officer. Now, I come from a different time and place, but a police officer, you wouldn't dare disrespect a police officer. But this is at a level that is just inappropriate, unconscionable. So it's complicated. There is not going to be a simple answer.
All right. First off, not necessarily relevant to the point he's making, but I would bet every single thing I own that this guy's been disrespectful to police throughout his entire life because of his dad was governor, and I've heard stories of him. But put that aside for a moment. Broadly speaking, he's been incredibly disrespectful to the idea of any type of criminal investigation, having shut down the Moreland Commission when they started to investigate him. But putting that aside, this is it's total gaslighting. Let's come back with just play this split screen number 4. This is after he has said he doesn't know of any baton incident in New York, as if he doesn't have a computer or a television set or
a staff to brief him on issues that the rest of us see.
Or any friends. Or
you might not have any friends. That might actually be real.
That's actually possible. Play this clip. This is number 4.
Last night we all saw videos of New York City police officers who were bludgeoning peaceful protesters in New York City with batons as they were enforcing the curfew. And these weren't people who were resisting or putting up any fight. Is this what you wanted when you said the cops should do their job?
Do you think anyone would say, a question itself can be a little offensive. a police officer doing their job, do you think there's any sensible police officer who believes their job is bludgeoning a peaceful person with a baton? See, it's that kind of incendiary rhetoric that it's not a fact. It's not a fact. It's not even an opinion. That is a hyper-partisan rhetorical attack. Police bludgeon peaceful protesters with batons for no reason. That's not a fact. They don't do that. Anyone who did do that would be obviously reprehensible, if not criminal.
Okay, so the entire NYPD is criminal, according to the governor. You at least admitted that. That's helpful.
First of all, that is a Donald Trump tactic right there.
Very
the
much
question's
so.
Offensive. How could you ask that question? I'm shocked you asked that question. I mean, I don't know how many clips I've done where that's been his response to that. I mean, that is Donald Trump could say the exact same thing. It has. I mean, literally. And on top of which, the sort of like that they would think that this is their job. Well, you know what? They can do it and not think it's their job, that they can just get away with it. And that what he was doing right there was basically printing a license for any cop to go out there and do it. Because if he and de Blasio has been no better, not an iota better on this. And it is, I mean, there's something structurally wrong for these guys to think that is the solution, it seems to me. Right? I mean, no question. Do you have a sense of what that is? Is it just like the political power of these police unions? Or is it their projection on what, like, how do you sit there and deny this when people are watching this? Like, it's so blatant.
Yeah, it's the use of a bully pulpit to try to contrive a different reality. And it's an escape from reality, putting rhetoric before it. It was interesting to see Cuomo's choices of terms, that the question itself was rhetorical, denying reality, when his response was so obviously denying reality. The juxtaposition of those images, I'm grateful that you put them next to each other, because it was so.
I got to be clear. We did not do that. I think, was it the DSA that put that tweet together? Do we know who shot the video?
Yeah, that was the DSA that
got off the DSA Twitter feed.
And I'm grateful to be endorsed by a bunch of chapters, including SF. And I see DSA, the DSA group here in SF was one of the first ones to challenge the curfew after it was imposed in San Francisco, and got arrested the first night it was imposed. So I've been super proud of my allies across the country, both in the movement and the DSA, all the different parts of the movement. But to this point about how officials get away with that kind of tactic, one of the pieces, and you asked about the power of police unions. One of the things to recognize here is that police unions intimidate public officials after they are elected. I think de Blasio is, I would be really eager to have been a fly on the wall of de Blasio's office, because I don't know who said what to him, but his rhetoric when he was running for the mayor versus his actions once he got in the office were very wildly divergent. And that also happens to line up pretty neatly to President Obama, who had very different rhetoric as a candidate than the reality of his presidency. And, I'm not going to absolve either of those officials on the basis of whatever they might have heard. But I certainly suspect that there were sticks as well as carrots offered to each of those figures by the agencies that sought and ultimately became unaccountable, at least to those political figure supporters, if not to those political figures themselves.